I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Joel Sands. I'm joined by my buddy Gordon Dymowski. We're here to review the movie The Third Man, which we both have on Blu-ray. This is a great, fun movie to watch with a lot of twists and turns that will get you excited to watch it.
Yeah, and it's available on Tubi, so you have no excuse. In fact, why don't you go pause this video, go watch it right now, and then come back and because we're going to be spoiling this people. It's you need to see this movie like right now.
Let me ask you a question, because how important Joseph Cotton and Orson Welles, they play best friends on the movie, but they were also best friends in real life. How important was that, you think?
I think it was very well. Let me start while Jewel go. Seriously, before I answer Jewel's question, I saw this movie in college as part of a film study class. This is a great movie. And I'll wait till Joel gets back to because you know how it's going to be. I answered. He's going to ask me the question again. And by the way, Patrick, if you're watching, we miss you. Yeah, I know you couldn't make it tonight, or by couldn't make it. I'm sure Joel didn't even bother to invite you, which is fine. But don't worry about it. Okay, everyone, hide, forget it. Okay, so well, I think the chemistry is important. But I think the thing to keep in mind with this film is that Wells, I think, was not he was not one of the co-stars. I mean, he's only in the last half of the movie, but I think that helped because Carol Reed was very much his films were influenced by a lot of Wells' films because Carol Reed, who directed this film, was the best way to describe him is that Carol Reed he's the kind of director Hitchcock would have been if Hitchcock had stayed in England. Did a lot of what were called quota quickies, England needed to have movies done. He did a lot of movies on the cheap. And he's known for 4 major films, 3 of which are kind of one right after the other. In 47, there's Odd Man Out with James Mason, which is also on Tubi. 48 is The Fallen, I don't find anywhere. And then Third Man is 49. And I think because a lot of his movies are very influenced by Wells' style, Citizen Kane, The Stranger had come out by this point, as well as The Lady from Shanghai. It felt like a natural. And I think the two of them, Cotton and Wells, had a very good relationship because they're the kind of friends who could play angry with each other. Because in Citizen Kane, Cotton is the man with a conscience, as Wells is Charles Foster Kane's turning. So he could go off on Wells because they had that kind of relationship. Here, Wells is the bad guy. He is the villain of the piece, and you needed. I think with Cotton, because he's not necessarily positioned as the hero. He's positioned as the guy who stuff happens to. You need that realization that, like, oh wait, this guy I thought was my friend is really a dick. Ooh, yeah. So I think they're comfortable enough to play adversaries, and that's always a good sign in like a film or a show when the two are friends in real life, but they're comfortable enough that they can play bitter enemies.
Yeah, Joseph Cotton plays Holly Martin, who is a writer, a sort of, he calls it a hack writer, but he's a writer of westerns, which is really interesting. And one of the people who are in the army who were investigating his friend is a fan of his, which I always liked. It fit this movie.
And the thing is, well, 2 things. One is the person who likes westerns is played by Bernard Lee, who later played M in the James Bond films of the 60s and 70s. But in Europe, westerns are not as highly regarded, especially American westerns are not that highly regarded. I mean, Holly Martin's is framed as a pulp writer, but in England, they're kind of what's considered juvenile. Like if they love this, like someone who liked the Man with No Name films, Sergio Leone films, they're going to see those more as art films than they are as westerns. So I love how they play that as like Martin's is not only just a lowest rung of writer, although he does benefit from that a little later on. It's almost like it would be like in our in American culture back then, if you wrote comic books, you weren't a real writer. So
Yeah, it's real. I love how he comes there because his friend he receives a letter from Orson Welles' character. He wants to hire him as his publicist, basically, if you will. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, it's. What did you think of this? Some of this movie, at least a lot of it, is filmed in Germany, but they also do use studio. What did you think
it's
of that?
filmed in Austria.
Or
It's filmed in
Austria?
Austria,
Sorry, Austria.
which is a separate country from Germany. It's very easy to figure out. Look at a map. One place is Germany, one place is Austria. I think yeah, the only thing I think they used studios for were the sewer scenes, and that was part of it was Orson Welles complained that sewer smell because sewer smell, and some of the action sequences they couldn't do in such an enclosed space. I think filming it in Austria, especially at that time, gives it a certain resonance because Austria suffered heavily during World War II. And this is only 5 years after the war. So you've got a city that is bombed out, um, a city that, as the narration tells you, is ruined by four different countries. You've got the British zone, the French zone, the Russian zone, and the American zone. And there's like a neutral zone, an international zone. It is basically it's very clear that everyone's in it for the money. It's corruption and as Graham Greene, I forget who does the introduction narration because there's a different narration with Joseph Cotton, but here it's sort of like I remember Vienna in the good old days of the black market, which kind of tells you the kind of environment you're going in, and it's just this steeped in it's a place that will challenge anyone's morality. And I think having it in Austria, you just don't get that kind of Egyptian European opulence. You don't get that atmosphere. And sometimes filming on location gives you a much better atmosphere. Like if they had CGI back then, this would look like crap because most CGI created environments tend to look like crap. Here there's a weight and a history and things are crumbling or falling apart, and I think that helps the movie.
Yeah, I think the fact that Joseph Cotton's character, in every way, he's portraying the characters he writes about to sort of, he feels that the cops are just being corrupt. So,
And it's weird too because as I was watching the film this morning, I was thinking, in a weird way, this is kind of like a Western. I mean, you just have to change some of the fine details. You have the earnest guy coming in to see his friend. Maybe it's a border town. Maybe it's a maybe it's like Deadwood, South Dakota, where they didn't really have a government per se. And that it's. Have you ever seen Deadwood? The show Deadwood.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they didn't really have a government, but they had law, we'll say.
Right. So imagine if imagine Joseph Cotton heads to Deadwood, and we learn his best friend is Al Swearingen. I mean, it sounds like I'm kidding, but I'm not. It does have that kind of. I think people forget that good Westerns play with moral complexity. I think in Europe they'd see it as okay, the good guy's got the white hat, the bad guy's got the black hat, they're going to duke it out. Well, no, it's I could see where you could see that having Holly Martin's write Westerns is very appropriate because it is this kind of idea that he's going through a situation that is very, and Holly is not a saint. I mean, he even talks about like he and Harry had escaped from, where he was left behind because they're escaping from a gambling den like 10 years ago, which tells you, Holly Martins is not, he, as one actress once put it about herself, he's as pure as the driven slush.
Yeah, he's not a white knight in any case. Like, he's not this. He's very much, how do I put this? Because there is a Western, I'm trying to think of the Western character. He's very much like Jimmy Stewart's characters would play. He's somewhat bad, but he's like teetering. He has some checkered past with his friend, but he didn't cross certain lines that his friend crossed here in this movie. And he thought, there's a line I love by Joseph Cotton. I knew him for 20 years, at least I thought I did. That line by Cotton is so good because he's saying it to the woman who loves Orson Welles' character. And she knew, well, she somewhat knew that he might be alive, or he was alive, which that's one of the best plot twists in this movie, because when he comes there, he learns, oh, your friend's dead. He learns it from a guy who's like cleaning. It's like, your friend's gone. He's like, what? He's gone. He's in heaven. He's like, and you see Joseph.
Yeah, he's either in hell or in heaven.
Yeah, Joseph Cotton's face is gold. I mean, he sells really. This is something we see on Dark Shadows all the time. That actors and actresses would sell with their faces, and you see that here in this movie really well. That Cotton is selling, and then he goes to the cemetery. I love the cemetery scene, how they shoot this, and then how they come back to it when they dig up his grave. What did you think of that scene, Gordon?
Well, I think it provides a nice little parallel to the movie, because when he's the first time, he's witnessing what he thinks is his friend's is Harry Lime's funeral, and that's how he engages with the woman played by Vali, and that's one of the inciting incidents. And in the middle of the film, it turns out that they dig up the corpse, and it's not Harry Lime, it's Harbin. It's the guy who was basically giving Harry Lime this illegal penicillin. And at the end, it's kind of a death on metaphorical death on many levels. Because one, it really is, Harry Lime is dead. So he is, he's putting an end to that. He's heading back to the States. He is also, it's pretty much clear that, okay, well, I'll get back to that point, but no, but this is a really great film. It's Trevor Howard's in it. He plays Calloway. There's a bunch of Austrian stuff. Let's see. Okay. Shh, go away. And it's also where he tries to at least say goodbye to the woman, and she's like not having anything to do with it, but it makes sense because what he's trying to do is to be a halfway decent guy. Yeah. So yeah, I think having that really helps give the film a sense of, it's not so you can. It's almost like you need the. It's like the screenplay is saying, okay, here are the endpoints of the arc, and here's where you can go. This is where they start. This is where they end. And it's a really lovely symmetry.
Yeah, I really love this movie too for this reason: is you see the characters who are corrupt. You're getting the sense of who's corrupt, but there's a lot of corruption in this place. That's one thing you pick up as with the introduction, like you said. But you see the people who witness certain things, and a lot of like this one guy's, I think it's his wife says, keep your mouth shut. Basically, that's what she's telling him. And the boy, his son, witnesses him talking to Holly Martin, and when he dies, they literally point. Oh, the boy points at him. He points at Holly Martin's, like he's tugging at him, like, oh, he killed my papa.
Yeah, and it's one of the great things about the film too is that they didn't do I mean, a lot of the cast who were in Vienna, who weren't like English speaking, were were actors from were Austrian actors. So they not only had problems like translating, giving directions, but the nice thing is they didn't even try to translate their dialect because it's all done through face and voice, and you can kind of get some translation, like towards the end the guy is like ballon, you want ballon, but there's also a Reed basically tells this so visually. It makes um, it adds to these little pieces of, because when you think about it, Holly Martins is only there like maybe a day, maybe 2 days at most. I love the wrinkle of Wilfred Hyde White as he's like he's the guy who's talking about the cultural exchange, and he's going to have Mr. Martins talking about, and I've been to events like that too, where it's like, tell us about the stream of consciousness. It's like more of that's the year that was at the time what Europeans would think. They're more about high morals, and they're not about I mean, in certain countries regarded pulp writers they regarded pulp writers a lot more respect. Usually, well, France especially, because like Jim Thompson, who wrote books like The Killer Inside Me, The Grifters, After Dark, My Sweet, The Getaway. He became more popular in France than he was in America. Here he was just like, he wrote tawdry paperbacks. There he was a great stylist and a literary. Chester Himes, who was a black writer, he created a series of pulp novels around two characters named I think it's Gravedigger Jones and Coffin Ed. And he wrote a lot of these, but then he ended up moving to France, and just people love the kind of stuff he wrote. So in the film, there's that little kind of implied snobbishness about this is, again, it's part of that. Westerns are that little, we don't like Westerns, but it's part of the Westerns are not part of Europe's cultural heritage the way they are America's. I'm trying to think of something that's comparable from Europe. It's like the Eurovision Song Contest. We don't get that. We've got American Idol. We've got the dollar store cosplay version. We don't need Eurovision Song Contest.
No, we don't. Well, here's another thing too. Like bande dessinée is in France. Like when they sell comics, people think that manga in Japan is this big deal. To me, bande dessinée is a bigger deal in France and Paris than comics are in Japan necessarily, in my opinion, because you have comics like Black Sad. Have you ever heard of that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a detective story with this cat with animals, which I love. That's awesome, and that's the thing too. Like you can see why writers, like you said, like pulp writers, are more accepted in France. It's culturally, they don't mind. How do I put this? They don't mind material that is more raw. I'll say, I guess, than to put it.
Yeah. They love raw dogging their comics.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, since Patrick's not here, people, I got to make the borderline inappropriate comments here. Work with me.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What was your favorite scene in this movie?
Ooh, let's see. There's so many good scenes. I think if there's one scene, everybody talks about the scene on the Ferris wheel. If I had to choose one scene, it's the scene in the hospital with the kids, because you never see the kids. And then there's, and it's talking about the horror, about how bad these kids are going through. And at one point, they're talking about how one of the kids didn't make it. And at first you see a teddy bear like standing up, like, so that the child can look at it. Then it's, well, and the child didn't make it, and you see the teddy bear lying on its face, as well as like toys being collected. I think that is, it's not a very cheerful scene. It's not a very uplifting scene, but I think it really drives home for Holly that, this is, if the fairground scene is him realizing that, yeah, Harry is a possibly a narcissist, maybe even a sociopath, but that he's not the guy he knew back then, and maybe he never did know that guy. The hospital scene is the confirmation that, yeah, Harry Lime is a douchebag.
What did you think of Harry Lime's girlfriend?
I think she's somebody who, I think for her, I think she's someone who got caught up in somebody else's. She was basically a pawn for Harry Lime. It was whatever that is. He got her papers to keep her in, but I don't think, the fact that he basically, when Holly tells him like, hey, you've got a woman here, she's like, oh, I don't care. Sure, she'll get along. Hey, you can have her. I don't care. I mean, that tells you how much he regards her. I think she's stuck in a tough situation. I think she's doing what she can to get out. And I think ultimately, the fact is, the reason why it all goes to hell is that she, despite everything Harry's done, she still believes that snitches get, to put it in more modern terms, snitches should get stitches. And I mean, she inadvertently rats out Holly to Harry. And I think she's trying to do the best she can. But she's also, I think part of her doesn't want to admit that, Harry maybe never loved her. Like maybe she had that twinkling, like, I don't think she did. I think she probably honestly believed that Harry was dead, and maybe she hadn't accepted it. But I think it's part of that denial of, oh, okay, well, he was alive, but now this other guy has betrayed him, despite the fact that, we don't know if she ever knew what he was involved with, because it's okay. She knew he could get him forged papers, but maybe she didn't want to know.
Yeah. Do you think it? I know you mentioned it a bit, but do you think too, it's the time? It's because it's set in that time, and it's her circumstance as well, and he was the only one who helped her.
Yeah, I think so too, because you have to keep in mind, this place is run by 4 big zones, where it's like the Russians are after her, but they have to ask permission from the English, and the English have to ask for, and it's not like, if it were, say, a totalitarian state, like if it were everyone under one rule, that would be one thing. But you're talking about a country that's recovering from a war, 5 years in, and this particular city is kind of governed by 4 different states with only one kind of like neutral area. I think you do what you can to survive. It's kind of like, like right now, to bring a little bit of modern politics, there are people who are, when it comes to, say, finding a job, there are people who say like, why should I engage in the usual dynamics of trying to find work? Not that they don't want to work, but it's like, if employers are going to not play by the rules and recruiters are not going to play by the rules, why should we? I think there's that, here's that sense of, in really distressing times, people go to disparate lengths. I'm not going to begrudge anybody. It's like, it's the classic morality tale of, if you need medication and you need medicine for your kids, and you don't have the money for it, are you going to break into the drugstore to steal it? And hey, I'm not going to judge someone if they need to break into a store to steal some bread. You know what I mean? To steal drugs, or steal drugs for their kids. You should never steal drugs, people. Never steal drugs. Except from your dealer. You should only steal from your dealer, not anybody else. Again, Patrick's not here. We need, and I'm sure Patrick is watching this, and he's doing that thing he does. He's like, Maybe I
uh,
should start dropping Butch's name more frequently, just so that he doesn't feel left out.
I think we know how you and Butch deal with dealers, and it involves a 45. Um, so, but this movie is really well shot. I love, even though the score is a bit weird sounding, I like it.
Yeah, well, it's zither. It's the zither. It was done primarily to give that film the right atmosphere. Because if you'd done an orchestral score, it would have knocked it out. But the zither was alien enough and intriguing. So it does sound, it's unusual, but that's one of the reasons why I think this movie is so great. Is that it uses an unconventional instrument to suggest everything about this. And I'll probably get in trouble for saying this out loud, but I think the third man treats Austria the way many science fiction movies treat alien worlds, as being, it's unfamiliar. You're not meant to really grasp or connect. And I think the zither music helps that, because it's welcoming, because it's an acoustic instrument, but it's also not something you're used to. You're not used to hearing that.
Yeah, that's the thing, and that's the thing to me. The theme of the story too. You're not used to hearing this type of story,
Mm-hmm.
like unless you watch like noir films constantly, and you hear different stories, because there's other stories like Out of the Past. That, if you ever seen that one's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Noir stories are very edgy. They're supposed to be, and this movie does that. And when you go to this, when they put you in this different country and they give that score, it's like you have this woman who is in love with this man who's not in love with her. He used her he bought her passport, which was fake, but he to use her. She, I do believe she's in love with him. That
Mm-hmm.
that I buy. And she's selling out his best friend to him. And then you have the police who are trying to be honest about everything, because when Harry Lime is dead for the first time, for the first time, but not really, the the major says it's the best thing that could have happened to him. And when you hear that, it's like, wow. But
See, I'm going to take issue with one thing. I don't think that necessarily that the police, the British police that he interacts with, have his best interest at heart either. I think they just want him out of the country. It's like, yeah, your friend's dead. Too bad. Leave. Because he's always, it's like, okay, fine, you can stay, but you got to be on the next plane out. And so I think that that's what adds to the tension. Because like with we just saw Double Indemnity, and you could see where, and a lot of noir operates by these rules, where there's the lead guy who may or may not be morally questionable. You've got the female lead, who may or may not be morally questionable. You've got at least the voice of, you have your Edward G. Robinson, your conscience, so to speak. But everything is relatable: cars, streets, city, buildings, situations. Here, you just take one of those and you change it into a very different environment, into a very different structure. And it's very hard to get your bearings, because you know that, like, okay, by this point, the World War II is 5 years ago. They're dealing with commies in every, you know, in every corner. And you would expect that in this movie, the Russians would be the main bad guys. Well, they're everybody's the bad guy in this movie. If you think about it, Holly is just the least bad guy.
he's your he's not necessarily your full-blown protagonist, but he's somebody who's less evil than the person who's just happens to be his best friend. And the people, I agree with you, the people around him, the police, they just want, for them, hey, Harry Lime's dead, that's great, get the hell out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and when you see something like that, you like, there's cop movies that you do see the police be like, look, stay out of it, but those are usually in their own state or in their own country.
Mm-hmm.
Here, Holly Martin's, he's a stranger amongst these people. He's an American. But that's the one thing I like too with Holly Martin's. He portrays that American spirit of, look, I'll do whatever the hell I want. Very John Wayne like attitude.
And you would figure that, like, granted it's a British film, but you would figure that at least the Americans would, someone from the American side would be like, look, he's one of ours. We take care of our own. And I think that since he's the only American here, it kind of makes me wonder, like, man, this is not a good look for us. We're just, we're probably just, I'm sure they're all like reading, man, this Holly Martin is a really good writer. I hope I meet him. Oh. Man, I'm going to turn on the radio, listen to some Jack Benny. Mm-hmm. Oh, I wish I'd get a decent steak.
Yeah, Holly Martin, I mean, he's left pretty much all alone. Like the police, you'll see the British police like show up every now and again, but the American embassy doesn't like touch him. They don't bother him. They don't help him. It's like he's in this world, and he is literally one man to himself in every way.
Actually, I take that back. I don't think there are Americans there. I think it's British, French, German, Russian.
Yep.
Okay, so people forget what I just said. Have a couple of drinks. Just imagine I was wrong.
It happens to me all the time.
Yeah, especially with Fall of the House of Usher from Netflix, but that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, I like that, Gordon. But this movie is really, really entertaining. I like The Fall of the House of Usher. It's really, really good. It tells.
Okay, because I know when I saw your review, I think you said something like, this is not The Fall of the House of Usher.
Yeah.
Or was it a different Fall of the House of Usher?
Well, I said they shouldn't call this The Fall of the House of Usher. They should call this The House that Poe built.
Well, okay, but we're okay. So again, I was wrong because I should have watched the whole review. But yeah, I see what you're saying. But we can argue about that later. In fact, let's have Patrick in, because that way anything we disagree on, we'll just blame him.
There you go.
Yeah, heads up, Patrick.
Yeah.
But no, we should. I know we kid, but we should treat Patrick with respect. He's not here, and quite frankly, he's a good friend.
Yes,
and
he's a good man. He's a good man.
Yeah, remember that, Patrick. You are a good man.
Yeah.
People appreciate you.
Yes, very much so. You are loved, sir. Yes. With this movie is so much fun to watch. It's got great atmosphere. The studio work they do is good. It fits the movie. You can't.
Yeah, really... I can't tell what they filmed in the studio. So yeah, and I think too, this is one of those movies that a lot of people have said it's a masterpiece. Yes, it really deserves that name. It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, this movie is amazing. If you haven't seen the third,
and again, it's on Tubi.
Yep.
So go. You can pause right here if you didn't listen to me before. Go watch it, and then you can come back and leave your comments about, hey, you both are right, or you both are wrong, or
Well, not only am I leaving a link in the description box for the movie, I'm leaving a link on Facebook too, because it's too good to not to,
It's really got Orson Welles in it.
Yeah, I mean, and this is okay. Which character is more despicable, this or the stranger character he plays?
Well, with the stranger, he's an out-and-out Nazi.
Yep.
So I think I kind of feel like either way, there's no one of my criterion for how evil someone is there any hope of redemption?
Yeah.
And I don't think either one there is, because with Harry Lime, funny enough, there was a radio show that was created after this called The Lives of Harry Lime, The Many Lives of Harry Lime. Mm. I learned about it because for a while I was working for a company called Radio Archives, and I got paid in gift certificates. So I ordered it's a digitally remastered set. You can find episodes on YouTube. And basically it's like the question was, well, Harry Lime died at the end and he was kind of a dick. How do you revive him? Well, these are all prequels. So he's a little less dickish, but it's more of like he gets involved in stuff he knows he shouldn't. And somehow he manages to leave it all. But like to get back to your question, Joel, I don't know if there's any. I don't know if if I can make a choice, because I think they're both pretty despicable. Because like with Harry Lime, it's not that. It'd be one thing if you were like, if we accept that in Vienna at this time, desperate times call for desperate measures.
Yeah.
If we accept that, if Harry Lime at that scene said, you know what, yeah, I know it's tough, I know lives are getting hurt, but I got to survive. Maybe that's debatable. But we said, hey, you see those dots? How much? He even goes and says, you know what, if I gave you $25 for each of those dots, how many dots would you be thinking of spending? That is, and I've known people like that who, it's like other human beings are a means to an end. And with the stranger, it's, he's a Nazi who basically is the same mentality. So I don't think there's a moral equivalent. I don't think there's any like they're both scumbags. I'll just put it that way. I don't think you can say, I don't think one is better or more or less evil. They're both repellent human beings. Let's see who I'm trying to think of who we've they're both repellent human beings, kind of like the studio execs who thought that the Tim Burton Dark Shadows movie was a good movie. Okay, I think I can say that. They are also kind of morally repellent, but that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, that really is. That'll be like a 2-hour podcast between me, you, and Patrick.
Actually, if there are any nonprofits that want to do a fundraiser, I think let's talk to Jewel, because I think we could do a live stream, like maybe it's a 48-hour live stream about how bad the Tim Burton Dark Shadows movie is. And before you go, oh, well, some people like it. Yeah, some people do. They have no taste.
Absolutely.
Okay. I since neither Patrick nor Butch are here, I'll be the one to make the outrageous statements. Okay, I'll be the one to provoke.
No, it's not it's not a great movie. It's a movie that it's the script that should not have been made. I mean, or approved. But
it's let's get back to The Third Man. It's a good movie.
Well, here's my final question for you. Orson Welles' character Harry Lime has one of the best character entrances ever in a film. What did you think of it?
Well, I thought it was brilliant, because even Wells in interviews had said, that's the part you want. You don't want to necessarily be the lead. You want to be the guy who's talked about. And Lime's a shadow. In fact, very early on, there's a scene where the woman's showing a picture to Holly, and she's saying, well, yeah, you can see that his face is blurred, but everything else is clear. Lime is a total enigma, because he's always talked about in retrospect, in memory. And when you actually do see him, it's the kitten that we're told, yeah, that kitten always liked Harry. Kitten comes up, and so it's this automatic. And I think by this time, Wells would have been known, like, I don't know if he was still famous from Citizen Kane, but I think his face was recognizable enough where you'd go. And the fact that he's got that kind of like cocksure grin, like, yeah, it's me. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, this movie is a straight 10.
I think it's a 20 out of 10.
Yeah, is there anything you want to add about The Third Man before we go, Gordon?
This is on Tubi. Everyone, you go watch it. Especially you, Patrick, and you, Butch, because I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. And Patrick, no, your Lime is never too hairy, okay?
Yep.
You can watch this, Patrick.
this is a movie we will be doing a revisited on with all of us for sure, because it's that good to talk about. Link to my buddy Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page is going to be in the description box. Link to his website is going to be in the description box. And yes, link to The Third Man is going to be in the description box and on Facebook. Gordon, buddy, thank you for putting up with me, bud.
Yep. Good night, all.
Good night.